Leave this restricted section now.
I'm a scheduled speaker. What's the legal basis to remove me?
I've had complaints. You don't belong up here.
My name is on the program. Verify with organizers.
I'm not debating. You're refusing a lawful order.
Then call.
Ma'am, you need to leave this area right now. The voice was sharp, impatient, cutting through the low murmur of conversation inside the conference hall. The woman turned slowly. She was seated at the front table, name placard placed neatly in front of her, a leather folder resting beside her chair. Her expression did not change. She looked up at the uniformed police officer standing over her, his hand hovering near his radio, his body angled in a way that already assumed resistance. "I'm a scheduled speaker," she said calmly. "Is there a problem?" It was 9:12 a.m. inside the downtown Washington Conference Center. Fluorescent lights washed over rows of suited attorneys, law professors, and policy advisors attending a federal judicial symposium. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and printed paper. Microphones hummed softly on the stage behind her. A banner above read, "Federal Courts and Constitutional Accountability." The officer did not look at the banner. He did not look at the agenda booklet clutched in her hand. His eyes stayed fixed on her face, then briefly flicked to her badge lanyard, then away again. "You don't belong in this restricted section," he said. "I've had complaints." A few heads turned. Chairs creaked. Someone in the second row paused mid-sentence and lowered their voice. "This is the speaker's table," the woman replied. Her tone remained measured, deliberate. "My name is on the program. You can verify that with the organizers." The officer exhaled through his nose, a sound that carried frustration more than effort. "Ma'am, I'm not going to argue with you. I need you to stand up and exit the room." The escalation was subtle but unmistakable. What had begun as a request had hardened into a command. The officer shifted his stance, feet wider apart. His presence drew attention now. Phones slid out of pockets. One man in a navy suit angled his screen slightly upward, recording without being obvious. Around them, the conference continued in fragments. A presenter on stage faltered mid-sentence. The hum of the projector filled the silence. "I am not leaving," the woman said. She folded her hands on the table. "And before this goes any further, I want to know the legal basis for removing me." The officer's jaw tightened. He glanced over his shoulder, aware of the audience forming. Backing down now would mean admitting error in front of witnesses. He straightened. "You are refusing a lawful order," he said. Several people exchanged looks. A woman near the aisle whispered, "This doesn't make sense." The woman at the table did not raise her voice. She did not reach for her credentials. She did not explain who she was. Not yet. She simply met his stare and said, "Officer, you are about to make a very serious mistake." The room felt smaller suddenly. He did not know it yet, but in less than an hour, every decision he made in this moment would be replayed, dissected, and questioned in courtrooms far more powerful than this hall. The tension inside the conference hall freezes in time, and the story steps backward years before that moment, before the uniform, before the accusation, before the eyes in the room began to judge without understanding. The woman at the speaker's table did not arrive there by accident. Her name was Judge Eleanor Brooks. She was 54 years old, and for the last 11 years she had served on the United States Court of Appeals, one of the highest judicial positions in the country, one step below the Supreme Court. She was born in 1970 on the south side of Chicago, the daughter of a postal worker and a public school librarian. Their apartment sat above a laundromat. The windows rattled when the elevated train passed. At night, Eleanor studied at the kitchen table while her mother graded papers and her father ironed uniforms for work. She learned early that authority did not always mean fairness. At 14, she watched her father get stopped by police for a broken taillight that wasn't broken. He stood silent while an officer searched the car anyway. That night, Eleanor asked why he didn't argue. He told her something she would never forget. Arguing is dangerous when the system already decided who you are. Eleanor earned a scholarship to Howard University, then Harvard Law School. She graduated top of her class, but interviews were colder than her resume suggested. Partners smiled politely, asked where she was really from, suggested she might be a better fit in public service. She took the hint and became a federal public defender. For 12 years, she represented people who looked like her father. Men stopped for nothing. Women searched for attitude. Teenagers charged for standing in the wrong place. She learned every angle of the Fourth Amendment, every loophole officers used, every excuse departments hid behind. Her reputation grew, calm, surgical, unshakable. Prosecutors hated facing her. Judges listened when she spoke. When she was nominated to the federal bench, civil rights groups celebrated quietly. When she was elevated to the appellate court, police unions noticed. Judge Brooks wrote opinions that stripped qualified immunity in cases of obvious abuse. She overturned convictions based on unlawful searches. She sent cases back to trial when evidence smelled wrong. She never raised her voice, never grandstood. She simply followed the law exactly as written. Now rewind to the man standing over her in the conference hall. Officer Mark Delaney was 38 years old, 12 years on the force, assigned to conference security on overtime detail. He grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, son of a corrections officer, who taught him that respect was something you demanded, not something you earned. Delaney's personnel file was thick, but not alarming at first glance. A few citizen complaints, failure to de-escalate, unprofessional tone. One allegation of racial bias marked unsubstantiated, another for excessive authority resolved with counseling. Nothing that stopped promotions. Nothing that removed him from duty. Supervisors described him as confident, assertive, command presence. In internal notes, another word appeared more than once. Rigid. Delaney believed rules kept order, and that disorder came from people who didn't know their place. He believed most problems started because someone refused to comply. He had learned that admitting a mistake in public was worse than making one. That morning, he was told to watch for unauthorized access near the front seating. Someone had pointed vaguely toward a woman seated where speakers sat. No name, no confirmation, just a feeling. By the time Delaney approached Judge Brooks, his mind had already filled in the blanks. He did not see a federal judge. He saw a challenge. And challenges in his world were meant to be corrected. The conference hall does not return to normal after the officer's last sentence. It tightens. The air feels heavier, as if everyone present senses that the situation has crossed an invisible line. Judge Brooks reaches into her leather folder and places a printed agenda on the table, sliding it forward just enough for the officer to see. Her name is there. Panel 2. Constitutional Oversight and Judicial Responsibility. Speaker. You can confirm this with the event coordinator, she says. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Officer Delaney does not pick up the paper. He barely glances at it. His eyes move instead to the people watching. Dozens now. Attorneys who understand procedure. Clerks who recognize authority. A retired judge in the third row who has already stopped taking notes. I don't need paperwork from you, Delaney says. I need compliance. The word lands hard. Compliance, not clarification, not verification. Compliance. A man near the aisle raises his hand, halfway uncertain. Officer, I think there's been a mistake. She's on the program. Delaney turns his head sharply. Sir, this doesn't concern you. Phones come up more openly now. No one is hiding it anymore. A woman near the back whispers, Is this really happening? Another quietly says, She's a judge, isn't she? Judge Brooks remains seated. Her voice stays steady. Officer, you are ignoring documentary proof and eyewitness clarification. Continuing this will escalate the situation unnecessarily. Delaney hears challenge where others hear reason. His chest tightens. He feels the familiar pressure of eyes and expectation. Backing down now would mean admitting he misjudged the situation. In his experience, misjudgment invites weakness. I'm giving you one final instruction, he says. Stand up and exit the restricted area. A conference staff member hurries down the aisle, badge bouncing against her blazer. Officer, I can explain. She's one of our appellate judges. There's been a misunderstanding. Delaney cuts her off with a raised hand. Ma'am, step back. The crowd reacts audibly now. Chairs shift. Someone scoffs. A low wave of disbelief moves through the room. This is no longer a private misunderstanding. It is a public display of authority refusing correction. Judge Brooks looks around the room once. She sees recognition on some faces, alarm on others. She knows exactly how this moment will be interpreted if she moves. If she doesn't, if she raises her voice, if she stays silent. She reaches slowly into her purse and places her official judicial identification on the table, sliding it forward with 2 fingers. The seal catches the overhead light. Delaney looks down. He hesitates for half a second, then he shakes his head. Anyone can carry fake credentials, he says. The room goes quiet in a way that feels deliberate, calculated. People understand now that facts no longer matter. Only pride does. Judge Brooks withdraws her hand. Then call your supervisor, she says. Right now. Delaney's jaw tightens. His hand moves closer to his radio, then stops. Calling a supervisor would mean explaining himself. Explaining would mean acknowledging doubt. Instead, he makes his choice. Ma'am, he says louder now for the room to hear. You are refusing to comply. I am escorting you out. This is the moment the crowd understands that something irreversible is about to happen. Officer Delaney steps closer. The distance between them collapses to less than an arm's length. His shadow falls across the table, cutting through the printed agenda and the name placard like a dividing line. "Stand up," he says. Judge Brooks does not move immediately. She inhales once slowly. Around them, the room holds its breath. The presenter on stage has stopped speaking entirely. The microphone emits a faint, empty hum. "I am not resisting," she says. "But you are acting outside your authority." Delaney reaches for her elbow. The contact is brief but intentional, firm enough to assert control. "Do not touch me," she says. Her voice remains calm, but something sharper moves beneath it now. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor ripples outward as people rise instinctively. Someone says, "This is wrong." Another voice says, "She showed ID." Delaney tightens his grip. "Ma'am, you're being escorted out." Time seems to slow. The moment stretches into fragments. The press of fingers on fabric. The slight jolt as her chair shifts backward. The faint metallic click as his hand brushes against the handcuffs on his belt, not deployed, but present. A reminder. Judge Brooks stands, not because she has been convinced, because she understands the danger of staying seated. As she rises, a woman in the front row begins recording openly, phone held chest high. A man near the aisle steps forward, then stops, unsure where intervention becomes interference. Delaney positions himself beside Judge Brooks, guiding her toward the aisle. The walk is short, but it feels endless. Every step echoes, every eye follows, every eye. Her heels strike the floor in a steady rhythm. Her posture is straight, her face unreadable. Inside, her mind is already moving through statutes, precedents, remedies, false detention, abuse of authority, civil liability. She is not afraid. She is cataloging. Delaney feels something shift as they move. A pressure behind his sternum. The awareness that too many people are watching. That this is no longer controllable. At the doorway, he pauses. His hand drops to his radio. For a moment, it looks like he might finally call it in. He doesn't. Instead, he says quietly, "You'll wait outside until this is sorted." Judge Brooks looks at him fully now. "This will be sorted," she says, "just not the way you think." The door closes behind them with a muted thud. Inside the hall, the conference sits frozen in disbelief. Outside in the quieter corridor, the consequences begin to take shape. Delaney swallows. For the first time, doubt creeps in. A question he has avoided presses forward. What if she was telling the truth? The corridor outside the conference hall is quieter, narrower, stripped of the authority that filled the room moments ago. The carpet muffles sound. The fluorescent lights flicker slightly uneven, exposing every detail without warmth. Judge Brooks stands with her hands relaxed at her sides. Officer Delaney positions himself a step away, close enough to control, far enough to pretend restraint. Neither speaks at first. Then footsteps approach, fast, purposeful. A woman in a charcoal blazer rounds the corner, breath-tight conference badge swinging against her chest. Behind her is a man with silver hair and a judicial lapel pin. His face is pale, not with confusion, but recognition. "There you are," the woman says, relief and panic colliding in her voice. "Judge Brooks. I'm so sorry. This should never have happened." Delaney turns. "Ma'am, this is a restricted situation. I need—" The man cuts him off. "Officer," he says quietly, "do you have any idea who you just removed from that room?" Delaney straightens. She refused to comply and could not verify her credentials. The man steps closer, eyes steady. "She is Judge Eleanor Brooks, United States Court of Appeals." The words hang in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Delaney's mouth opens slightly. He looks at Judge Brooks again, really looks this time. The calm, the posture, the absence of fear. "No," he says almost reflexively. The woman in the blazer reaches into her folder and pulls out the official program, flipping it open. She points. "Panel 2, that's her. We've confirmed with Chambers." Another voice joins from behind. A uniformed U.S. Marshal who has just arrived, radio still clipped to his shoulder. "Officer, I can confirm her identity." The corridor feels suddenly too small for Delaney's breathing. His face drains of color. The rigid confidence that carried him minutes ago fractures at the edges. Judge Brooks speaks for the first time since the door closed. "You had multiple opportunities to verify," she says. "You chose not to." Delaney's hand trembles as it drops from his radio. His eyes dart, searching for an exit that doesn't exist. The realization settles in fully now. This was not a misunderstanding, this was an exposure. "I thought," he begins, then stops. There is no sentence that ends safely. The marshal steps between them slightly. Not protective, procedural. Judge, we're escorting you back inside if you wish. She nods once. Thank you. I will return when this is formally addressed. Delaney stands frozen as they walk past him. Conversations are already starting behind closed doors. Calls are being made. Reports are being drafted. He understands it now. The moment he dismissed her credentials, the moment he refused to call a supervisor, that was the point of no return. The truth has been spoken out loud, and nothing that comes next will be quiet. What happens next does not unfold loudly. There are no raised voices in the corridor, no public reprimand, no dramatic apology. The real consequences begin the way they always do in systems of power. Quietly, on paper, behind closed doors. By noon, the conference schedule is rewritten. Judge Brooks delivers her remarks as planned. Her voice never wavers. She speaks about constitutional accountability, about the danger of unchecked authority, about the cost of assuming guilt before evidence. Some in the audience glance toward the back of the room where Officer Delaney no longer stands. By 2:00 p.m., the first phone call is made from Chambers to a civil rights attorney in Baltimore. By 4:30 p.m., requests for body camera footage, security logs, and radio transcripts are formally submitted. By the next morning, the video recorded by attendees is everywhere. Multiple angles. Clear audio. The moment credentials are dismissed. The refusal to verify. The physical escort. The silence of the room. Within 24 hours, the clip crosses 1 million views. Comment sections fill with anger, disbelief, and recognition. People share their own stories. Being removed from stores, from offices, from spaces they were entitled to occupy. Legal analysts slow the footage down frame by frame. They name the violations: unlawful detention, abuse of authority, failure to de-escalate, retaliation for asserting rights. 3 days later, Judge Brooks files a federal civil rights lawsuit. The complaint is precise. 38 pages. Every minute accounted for. Every witness named. It alleges violation of the Fourth Amendment, equal protection violations, official misconduct under color of law. Officer Delaney is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His union issues a brief statement. Due process. Await the facts. The internal review does not go the way they hoped. Emails surface. Prior complaints resurface. A pattern emerges that cannot be ignored this time because the victim is not anonymous. She is not powerless. She is a judge whose written opinions are studied nationwide. The department announces disciplinary action. Termination follows weeks later. His badge is surrendered. His appeal fails. The city settles the lawsuit quietly. The number is never officially confirmed, but sources close to negotiations say it exceeded 7 figures. Judge Brooks donates the settlement to legal aid organizations and judicial ethics training programs. She releases one statement. Short, controlled. This was never about me. It was about a system that must be corrected. The officer who once believed compliance mattered more than law now understands something else. Authority without accountability collapses under its own weight. What happened in that conference hall was not a misunderstanding. It was a textbook failure of law judgment and restraint. And the reason it matters is not because the woman removed was a federal judge. It matters because the same sequence of decisions happens every day to people without titles, without witnesses, without power. Legally, the violation was clear. A law enforcement officer acting under color of law may not detain or remove an individual without a valid legal basis. Refusal to comply with an unlawful order is not a crime. Credentials must be verified, not dismissed out of convenience. The moment Officer Delaney ignored documentary proof and declined to contact a supervisor, the encounter crossed into unconstitutional territory. This was not about security. It was about perceived authority being challenged. Courts have ruled repeatedly that ego is not reasonable suspicion. Discomfort is not probable cause. And compliance cannot be demanded when the order itself is unlawful. Psychologically, this case exposes how bias operates under pressure. The officer did not wake up intending to violate civil rights. He relied on shortcuts. Who looks like they belong? Who sounds authoritative? Who is expected to explain themselves? Once that internal narrative formed, every piece of contradictory evidence was reinterpreted as defiance. This is how escalation happens. Not through malice alone, but through refusal to question one's own assumptions. For viewers watching this, the lesson is practical. If you are confronted by authority, stay calm, speak clearly, Ask for the legal basis of the action. Request a supervisor. Document everything if it is safe to do so. Compliance under protest preserves safety. Documentation preserves accountability. And for institutions, the lesson is unavoidable. Training without consequences is theater. Oversight without enforcement is permission. Systems that ignore patterns until the victim is powerful enough to demand attention are not broken. They are functioning exactly as designed. Judge Brooks returned to the bench. Her opinions carry more weight now, not because of sympathy, but because experience sharpened what was already there. She does not speak publicly about the incident. She does not need to. The record speaks for itself. The question left behind is simple. If this can happen to someone who knows the law, who holds the law, who embodies the law, what happens to those who do not? That is not a rhetorical question. It is a call to awareness.